Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your permission to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Moore and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded or distributed, please go to the LinkedIn Live video feed, the link to which I've just placed in the chat room. Tonight, our featured guest is Norma Winstone, a jazz vocalist whose latest album, Outpost of Dreams, will be the subject of tonight's conversation.
Fly the wind, wandering star, there'll be a bark, sails aloft to carry you on. Fly the wind, cheat the dark. Moon on moon, where we sailed, you sail alone. Just now and then you pass very close on the wind, almost here. Ah, da, 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 dee, dee. La, dee, dee. La, 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 da, 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 dee, da, 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 da. La, da, 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 ba, da, 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 dee, dee, dee. La, 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 da, da, da.
Welcome, Norma.
Good evening, or whatever time it is where you are.
Norma, so tell us a little bit about where you come from, how your musical tastes were formed, and why you decided to become a jazz vocalist.
Well, I was born in the East End of London, and to a fairly working class family, just when the war was beginning, and well, no, maybe a couple of years into the war, but my parents both loved music of all sorts. They loved operas, normally the popular ones, and but they loved Sinatra. My father heard Frank Sinatra on field radio when he was away, in the war, and wrote to my mother and said, "You've got to hear this singer, he's great." And so he became God in our house. It still is, really. I still think he's the best. So I don't know, my mother knew lots of songs. She used to sing herself, just at Christmas parties and things. Sometimes I would sing with her. And everything I heard came through the radio, because there was no recording equipment in those days that the general public had. And we really didn't have any records anyway. So all the music I heard and it was influenced by came through the radio. And luckily, there were some good things played, on the light program in London. And I just focused immediately on beautiful songs and beautiful pieces of music. I mean, I didn't differentiate, what they were. I just loved them, whether they were popular, light musics, heavy, whatever. If I liked it, I liked it. And generally, if I heard a standard, I always knew that I wanted to sing. As soon as I heard these songs, I thought, oh, I'd really love to sing that. And if I didn't know a particular song very much, she would often know it. And I say, how does that go? And what are those words of the second verse? And she would generally know them, tell me. And when I was about 8, she took me to the cinema. She used to go every week. She was an avid cinema goer. And there was a film called Words and Music, and it featured the music of Rodgers and Hart. And there were all kinds of people. I think Perry Como was there. I can't remember, you know, I was 8 after all. But one person that really I was thrilled and gripped by it was Lena Horne. She came onto the screen. She was so beautiful for a start. I was mesmerized, and she sang The Lady is a Tramp. And I said to my mother, I want to sing that song at the next Christmas party. Can you get me the music? And she did get me the music. And so I learned it. I had no idea what I was singing about, but you know, I wined and dined on mulligan stew. I didn't know what mulligan stew was, but I learned it. And my dad, when he came back from the war, I mean, he played the piano just by ear, and he would accompany me and my cousins at the Christmas parties that we had. Everybody would do something, would do a turn, and we get money, you know, the children, for performing something. And so that was the beginning. I mean, I was surrounded really by people that loved music of all different kinds. So it's a fantastic start.
And Norma,
my dad loved Fat Swallow, really loved him. And in fact, one night they were out at a pub, my mum and dad, and they heard somebody playing the piano there, and he could play Alligator Crawl, Fat Swallow's Alligator Crawl. And they brought him back to the house and got me up from bed and brought me downstairs to listen to this guy play Alligator Crawl. So you see, I mean, yeah, there was a lot about music in my early days.
Wow. And Norma, so you said also, I mean, that's fascinating that to me that you come, as you said, from the East End of London, a working class family, yet they were so interested in music, which was considered, I mean, especially classical music and that kind of stuff, such a bourgeois, well-to-do thing. I mean, that's how I've been told about it. Tell me, how did you start your career then? Most of us hear, oh, you've got to have money in order to do a career in music.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I just, you know, when I left school, I thought I'd really like, by this time I'd heard jazz, of course, because I heard Ella Fitzgerald, and a cousin of mine, and I eventually got a record player when I was about 12. And a cousin of mine lent me an album of Ella singing, and she was singing Flying Home and Airmail Special, and she was scat singing. I thought, wow, this is good. I mean, I still didn't think of it. I didn't know about jazz. I mean, it was just a word. It was still music to me. And then I did hear Dave Brubeck, Jazz Impressions of the USA, and I read that they were improvising. And I thought it was all written because Paul Desmond's solos were so singable. I learnt them. Anyway, then from there, I moved on and heard Kind of Blue. And Kind of Blue was so influential, I think, to every jazz musician. But hearing the way Miles played, and of course I could learn his solos as well, because he didn't play millions of notes, you know, so it was possible to sing what he played. And I just felt, when I heard that music, I just thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if a voice could be involved the way they're involved in the music, not just sing the song and then they play what I wrongly thought at the time was the interesting bits, and then the singer has to come back and sing the song again. But that's how I felt then. But I had no idea how it could happen. So that's where I was, and I left school, and I thought, well, I'll go and see if I can sit in at places. And before that, someone said, you know, I had studied piano at Trinity College. I got a scholarship to go there once a week when I was 12, and I could have done singing as a second study, but I knew that it would only be classical because there's no way of learning any other kind of singing unless you wanted to sound like Ethel Merman and do, show songs, which I didn't. And so I thought, no, I won't do singing. So I didn't have any lessons. And then someone said to me, oh, look, there's a singing teacher not too far from where you live. So I went to see him and he taught me about breathing. He said, breathe. And I went, and up went the shoulders. And he said, no, 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 no. I never heard him sing. I think he was a saxophone player. He played the piano, though. And he taught me to breathe, as instrumentalists breathe to sing. And I think that's the most important thing anybody could have told me. I mean, they can tell you about how singing arpeggios and things, but I just knew the kind of music I wanted to sing, and I just needed the equipment to do it well. And so I practiced what he told me and eventually got some gigs with people that he knew, but they were weddings and functions, and I didn't want to do that. So I stopped singing. And for a couple of years, I just collected music. If I'd hear a song that I liked, I'd see whether I could get the music, which wasn't easy to get. But I remember going into a shop once and seeing the music for Lazy Afternoon. And I grabbed it, because I'd heard June Christie sing it. And I thought, oh, that's wonderful. Anyway, so I managed to get music together, and I happened to meet somebody who I knew somebody who was writing words, and I was working during the day, and I saw an advert for a jazz singer in the Melody Maker. So I don't think I had a phone at home. So I thought I used the office phone. So I rang up this number. I thought there was nobody around in the office, but there was one girl and she heard me and she said, oh, do you like jazz? I said, yes. She said, you should come to this pub where I go every weekend. There's a trio there. And so I went, I sat in, and they had a singer. And they said, oh, he's leaving next week. Would you like the job? So that started me off. And then I met other musicians that you came in from there. And then I had the confidence. I was very shy, actually, but I had this will to sing. So I'd go and ask if I could sit in different places. And of course, in London at that time, there was a lot of pub music, jazz trios in pubs. And so I'd go and ask them that I could sit in, and they reluctantly, of course, always, singers come up and say, can I sing? And they think, well, all right. And so they let me, and then they'd say, oh, actually, we need somebody in 2 weeks' time. Could you? And it sort of built up. And I met John Taylor like that at one of these events. Sorry, haven't given you a chance to get a word in. So I don't know if you want to
Wow. And just tell us,
ask
John
anything.
Taylor, you said the pianist, then
Yeah.
you later developed quite a relationship with him, I believe.
Yes, well, we actually married for quite a long time and had 2 sons. But yeah, so I mean, he came along to one of these things where I was singing, and he asked if he could sit in, and he played in the interval, and then at the end of the evening said, here's my number if you ever need a pianist, which I didn't because the pianists were always there, in situ. But eventually our paths crossed. He was playing in a pub. He had his 5 nights and I had 1 night, and we immediately started to rehearse, which people didn't do. They just went and sang the standards, but we wanted to get them a bit better and do something else. And my improvising at the time was to keep the lyrics for the second chorus rather, and improvise a melody around the lyrics. I wasn't singing wordlessly at the time. I didn't quite know about what to do, but
Okay.
that
No,
developed later.
Norma, let's get in another song, please. Let's listen to The Step.
Oh,
Here it
okay.
is.
Winds sweep across the plain. Oh, where will I find you again? The path of a shooting star, the heart dare not follow. I'm lost in the vastness of you.
Norma, so tell us a little bit about, continue talking about this, your relationship with John Taylor and this kind of, you said before, you didn't want to do weddings, you wanted to do some serious and make a real artistic product. And so you were really experimenting with a lot of stuff. Tell us about this music that you made and how that was different from the other stuff happening.
Well, I mean, we played a lot of standards, that's what people expected to hear, in that situation. And but John was starting to write stuff. He just discovered Bill Evans, I think, coming out of Oscar Peterson into Bill Evans. And so he was writing things, and I don't quite know how it happened, but that, I mean, the wordless thing and the experimenting in that way came a bit later, but we just tried to find unusual songs, unusual standards that not everybody was singing. And John was at the beginning of his career too, so he was learning about voicings, and how to play, and trying to play voicings like Bill Evans. So I mean, we just did the standard sort of repertoire, but I think really later, I think I had actually already met a trumpet player called Ian Carr, and he said, I think you should sing with the New Jazz Orchestra. That was run by a writer called Neil Ardley, and who had been transcribing a lot of Gil Evans music. And I joined that band, and at the time the pianist there was Michael Garrick, and he had written some songs and said, would you like to learn them? Which I did. And I went to one of his concerts, and he said, would you like to sit in and sing one of the songs that I gave you? And I said, yeah, okay. So I did. I sang this song, and then he said, I went to sit down, and he said, no, stay on and join in the next piece. The next piece I didn't know. I mean, I'd never heard it. But Michael was one for writing, things like Indian kind of things, like one chord. And so I listened to what the others had done, and I just sang a wordless solo. And at the end of the evening, I mean, the front line was 2 saxophones and trumpet. And one of the saxophone players was leaving, and Michael said, would you like to join the band and sing the saxophone lines? And so that's what I did. And so some tunes I would sing with words. Sometimes I'd just be singing the saxophone, the saxophone parts. Luckily I could read, it was unusual in those times. I mean, now all singers are educated and they can read, but I happened to learn the piano, so I could read. And so I was able to do that. And of course, developed. Then other people started to ask me to do things with them, like Mike Westbrook, Kenny Wheeler, eventually with his band, and he wrote me in as an instrument. And I don't know, it just happened, really. And I was ready to do it. And it's what I was, and I realized in the end, I was doing this thing that I'd imagined when I heard Kind of Blue, the voice being integrated in the music rather than being out front, which I never really wanted to be. Yeah. And of course, the relationship with John carried on, the musical relationship. And at one point there was nothing much happening, and then he said, let's try to get an album, and so we made some duo recordings, and he had a list of record companies that he wanted to go and see. Most of them were in Germany. There wasn't much happening in England. I mean, recording wise, there was a lot happening, a lot of music happening, but not many opportunities to record. And Manfred Eicher's ECM was at the top of the list. And at that time, it was possible to get an interview with him. It wouldn't be now, I think. But so John went. But the night before he went, he'd just got a synthesizer. And he was playing around with it. And he said, "Oh, look, I've come up with this loop." And he gave me the microphone and said, "Improvise over this." So I did. And he took that with him. And Manfred liked the things that we had recorded in the studio. But when he heard this, John said, "Oh, I've just got this thing that I got, I started last night, I just recorded this thing." And Manfred said, "Oh, I can hear a flugel with the voice." And Azimuth was born. And yeah, I mean, it just went,
Incredible.
And I love it. I thought, well, this is wonderful. This is what I couldn't have imagined that, but I knew I was involved in a way that I wanted to be, as a sound. I mean, the voice is a sound after all, so why not use it as a sound? And you've got the opportunity to sing words as well. But I couldn't see, I mean, it got some strange reactions sometimes, Critics weren't all that sure what it was. They thought that it's not jazz really, is it? But we were all jazz musicians, so I don't call it what you like. I didn't care what you called it. It was just music that I enjoyed being involved in.
Okay. Let's listen, Norma, now to This is Beneath an Evening Sky.
Oh, yeah. Ralph.
From the room where he lies, all he sees is the sky's changing light, and the walls of his room seem to fade as they move into night. There's a far distant cry from the depths of the sky, darkened hallways, perfumed gardens. On the air there's a trace. He remembers her face and an evening sky such as this. In a room across town, she looks up, he smiles down through the years. They abandon the day, making love as the sun disappears under skies holding still, dappled light on the hill, all the world glows as the day slows, as the sky turns to flame. She remembers his name and an evening sky such as this, such as this.
Okay. So this brings us to the more philosophical part of our conversation that I know everyone looks forward to every week. This is titled Generation Gap.
Mhm.
Norma, in music history class, we are taught about the Italian singer Alessandro Moreschi, who was called, quote, the Angel of Rome. When we listen to the 1904 recording of him singing, today's usual reaction is confusion. What we hear is hardly evokes the angelic. Why is that? Is it because the recording technology wasn't as evolved as it is today? Or maybe because Moreschi was a 44-year-old singer when he made the recording? Maybe it's both of those factors together. But what if it's that we don't really get it? After all, which woman today sees Rudy Valentino in a movie and falls in love with him? Recently, I heard a recording of the Bach cello suites and wondered which amateur did it. He was playing so, quote unquote, out of tune. Much to my surprise, the cellist was extraordinarily famous, and the recording was considered state of the cello in the early 1990s. Yet, we never throw the baby out with the bathwater, do we? None of those artifacts repels us. Instead, they inspire us to reimagine today and tomorrow. That's exactly what happened when the rapper Drake included one entire minute of your 1977 song, The Tunnel, in his 2023 hit 4-minute song, IDGAF. Norma, what was good music to you in 1977? We've just had the pleasure of listening to your new 2024 album, Outpost of Dreams. What makes you proud as we've been listening to it together today?
What makes me proud of what we just listened to, or 1977? I mean, I'm very proud of what we did in 1977, and absolutely amazed that Drake would have picked it up. But I think, we don't music. I mean, you can never. People's tastes are different anyway. One person will like something and another person will hate it. So these recordings that you're talking about, we might think they were bad, or we don't recognize them as good music today. And I don't know, because I think anything that I would have liked at any time, I would still like. I don't know any of the piece. Well, I know the Bach cello suite, but I don't know who it was that playing it that you heard. But I don't know the singer in the first place that you mentioned. But I mean, what makes, I don't know. I think that the music, sometimes music is a bit ahead of the people that are listening to it, and I think that stuff that we did with Azimuth probably was considered a bit ahead of its time, and it seems to have proved that by some of it being picked up by a current artist, you know. I don't quite really understand it. But it's music. I loved it then. I still love it now. In fact, I like it a bit more now when I listen, because there was a long time, many years I didn't listen to any of that stuff. And when I hear it again, yeah, I'm proud of it. And love what Kenny and John play. Now, the current thing, I mean, I love Kit's playing. He's very adventurous, which John was. Taylor was kind of wild. You never really knew quite what he was going to do. And I love that danger in the music. And I mean, actually, I started to write lyrics as well because I wanted to expand the repertoire out of just the standards or just music that people were giving me to sing, you know, that they'd written. And so I started writing words to, like, that one, Beneath an Evening Sky. And anyway, Kit and I just happened to be working together at some place, and I realized he could play everything that I gave him to play, and more so, you know, he was inspiring, gave me ideas, you know. And then he said it would be really great if we could make a duo album, which I was amazed. I mean, he's so much younger than I am, and I thought, well, I'm obviously still doing something interesting for him to say that. And we eventually did, as you know. Here it is. But I mean, I'm not. You did mention one time, I think, about being a band leader. I've never been a band leader. You know, I can't. My musical things have always been collaborations. I feel they've been collaborations because I don't want to be accompanied. I want to sing with somebody who's as interested as I am in what I'm doing. And it seems to be the case with Kit. I hope it lasts. I don't know where it's going, but it's very early days. So we'll see.
And so I'd like to ask, are there any questions? Would anyone like to ask a question, make any comments? Please feel free to chime in. Other than that, let's listen to one last song. This is Rowing Home.
Oh, yes.
Upon the lake in winter sun, the sun that bleaches the sky, in separate thoughts as they row, the closer they grow, the lovers slip by. They slowly cross in fading light. The movement touches each soul, and what becomes of them now is written somehow beyond their control.
Norma, so last question. What do you wish those who listen to this album?
What do I wish them? Well, I hope that they enjoy it. I wish them enjoyment from it. And I don't know what else I can wish them. If they're singers, I wish them to love what they do. Well, anybody that is playing music, that I'm sure they do love what they do anyway. I can just only wish them fulfillment from the effort of trying to do something good.
Okay.
What else to say?
Let's see how we can stay in touch with Norma. here, if first of all, if you want to buy the album, it's easy enough. ecmrecords.com/artist/Norma-Winstone. And we have it all here, all the albums. There's the famous Azimuth album she was talking about from 1997. And here is the Outpost of Dreams available. You can listen to it, you can purchase it. And so it will become available in just in 2 days,
Tomorrow.
So lovely. So
No,
again,
no, sorry, 5th of July. 5th
5th
of
of
July.
July, 2 days. Okay, so
2 days.
there it is on ecmrecords.com. And here we have Norma's website if you'd like to stay in touch with her about concerts and other things. And Norma, if people have questions, can they reach out to you here under contact?
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course they can. Yeah.
So feel free to reach out to Norma if you have any questions. Her website is easy enough to remember, normawinstone.com. Thank you so very much to Norma Winstone.
Thank you, Simeon.
So let's
Bye-bye.
see.
No.
Let's see what's coming up right now.
I see.
Next week on Vienna Live, it is Michael D's Grove's Groove. The legendary trumpeter Roy Hargrove is usually and justly depicted as a generation-defining voice and a radiant, troubled genius. What gets lost in that characterization is Hargrove's equally vital role as a mentor for younger musicians who shared his deeply felt commitment to exploring the full spectrum of jazz and in carrying the blazing torch of tradition determinedly forward. Among those whose life and career were touched by Hargrove's influence is the multi-instrumentalist and composer Michael Dees. With his enthralling new album Grove's Groove, the second on which the acclaimed trombonist focuses solely on the baritone saxophone, pays tribute, says thanks, and bids farewell to one of modern jazz's most iconic figures. Grove's Groove is due out August 23rd via Lecoq Records, features a superb band with Hargrove alumni and friends Steve Davis, Rodney Whitaker, Terrell Stafford, and Ulysses Owen Jr., joined by Bill Cunliffe and Jocelyn Gould. Come welcome Michael to our show. That's next Wednesday. Michael Dees, Grove's Groove. As always, all information about upcoming shows can be found at www.simeonmorrow.com. And again, also we have this sign up to get more information about Vienna Live. Just have to put your email in there at simeonmorrow.com. Once again, thank you so very much to Norma Winstone. Thank you to Victoria and Frederick Mulligan, as well as Agnieszka and Benoit Rivolet for their support of this show. Thanks to my cousin Mike, a marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or engineer, they have a really cool tool that you should check out. Thanks also to Mary Schlesinger for the lovely Viennese library scene behind me. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants who make it all worthwhile. From London, England, and New London, New England, goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
Thanks, Simeon. Bye-bye.